Okay, so we are live. Hey,
Hello.
Eric, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm about to retweet our thing.
Yeah, I'll let you
Yeah,
retweet that.
good.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Super, super. So I'm very happy to have you. Thanks for reaching out.
yeah,
I'm always like, looking for, sometimes I just, don't have like the bandwidth to be like, okay, who should I have on next? So
of
actually, I
course.
love that people are like, I want to chat, because I'm always up for chatting to anybody and everyone. So thanks so much. Um, but I guess I'd love to start pretty much as I always start, but I'd love to hear like how how this journey started. Like, I know it's been, a while. Like, you've been in the space for quite a long time. You're one of the pioneers of the trash art movement. You've created a whole community around you. So let's start from the very beginning and kind of go from there.
Sure. Wow, the beginning. So it all started when I was going through a mental health breakdown in 2000, early 2018, and I was rediscovering art again and using that as part of my therapy to recover and go through the process of like figuring out the next stages of my life after this whole situation that I had gone through. And what happened was I just like typed in one day crypto and art, 100%, sometime early 2018, and I fell down this rabbit hole. And I watched the scene for a little bit, wasn't
Mm,
100% sure um, what it was. Was it for me? I was already investing in Bitcoin and Chainlink
okay.
and things like that. So, and I worked in tech for a long time, so I was very familiar with the technology. But the idea of merging these two worlds that gave me so much joy and passion didn't seem possible until I typed in those two words.
That's insane. So you were always kind of like, you came pretty much from like, you knew crypto basically.
I
So you
did, yeah.
okay. So you kind of like came through that route.
Mhm.
Um, and what was your first encounter like? What was the first thing that that you kind of did once you got into the space? Like, what was the space at the time?
Well, it was. I was seeing a lot of Josie. Josie was sort of
Yeah.
like the star on the scene. Coldy, X Copy. Um, I don't remember if Trevor was there quite yet. I think Matt Cain was still kind of around. So these are the people I was seeing and sort of like, trying to figure out where I fit in. Uh, and and I just applied to Super Rare, not knowing that it had any prestige, not knowing that it meant anything important in the community. It just seemed like the right place for me, and luckily got in. And I actually waited several months before I minted my first token, which was I think in, if I remember correctly, it was early June, late June, 2019 was my Genesis piece. But I had been on the platform I think since April, but I waited that long to make because I was like, excuse my language, but I was like, what the fuck do I do here? Because I was trying to figure out where I fit in.
That's interesting, and obviously, like, you've mentioned the let's say, oh, so and so, like, quote unquote OGs, which,
Mhm.
essentially are the OGs, really.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and from there, like, how did you tell us a little bit about the whole story, like, even
Yeah,
trash art, like, how did that come about? What is trash art?
yeah. Well,
Like, let
let's start there. I think there are lots of people who have their own perceptions of what trash art is. For me, it's evolved into sort of three forms. You have the um, the movement itself, the
mm,
meme, so the toter, and everything that's been, and all the derivatives from that, and the aesthetic, the glitchy, um, photomoshed, uh, a derivative from like junk art and traditional trash art, where it's not necessarily about the quality of the art itself, but the message the art is trying to convey, like appropriation art would or junk art, that in the 1950s. Um, so that's sort of when I think about trash art today. That's where it's evolved into. What it was at that point was a derogatory term that people were using to describe artists like Rodness, specifically because there were influencers on the platform of Super Rare who didn't like the direction that art was going from artists like Max Osiris and Rodness and a whole slew of others. And what was going on at that point was tension between, what is art? Basically, trash art began to ask the same question. It happens over and over again throughout art history. When the Impressionists came around, people were like, "This isn't art," right? And they were having all their struggles with the salons, or the Dadaists and the Surrealists when they were being challenged by the academics, saying this isn't art. The same thing was happening in the crypto art space. It just happened that trash art, which was this derogatory term that we then began to own in a way that was saying, you know what, you want to call us trash art? We're gonna be trash art, and we're gonna be more trashier for you. And so that's sort of like where it all began for me. That's where I found the people that I felt truly in line with: Jay DeLay, Colin Custom IP, Rodness, Max, Gary Cartledge, all these dudes, Wizard X, all these people that seem to have this idea that no one can tell us what art is. Like who are you, influencer? Who are you, man with money, who says your dollars are more valuable to me because you want to determine what I should make for my own art? No, we bucked that. We hated it. We pushed from that. Some of us got kicked off the platform for challenging those. Rodness got kicked off. Max got kicked off. I got kicked off for attempting to mint a Hackatao remix. Again, challenging this idea and this concept of what is art, what is legally viable. That's what I love about trash art the ethos was simply about challenging decentralization, but from many different angles. Decentralization in terms of gatekeeping, decentralization in terms of copyright and copyleft, decentralization in terms of the idea of what is art, right? Because the traditional art world, big art, has told us that the masters would make art, right? But art is so much more than that, and that's what drew me to trash art.
That's interesting, especially the topic of copyright and copyleft and like the remixes. I feel like it's a topic that kind of comes up over and over again because like especially for example with like more open platforms, like your Rarible, like your Hicket Nunc, or the open marketplaces. You see a lot of those remixes happening, and I always find that it's like you either are okay with it and you actually love it, or you're completely against it and it kind of goes against all of your like morals and ethos and you hate it. It's a tough one, right?
Not for me, no. But for some people it is. There's an emotional attachment that people have to either their art or a company's financial attachment to their product or IP. So when you think about it from those perspectives, of course it's hard because they see it as money or passion, and you're stealing that from them. But art has always been evolution. Everything is a remix. Nothing is original. Everything is built on what was delivered before. And so for me, no, it's not. And that's why I continue to push and challenge companies like Disney. I'm still waiting for my cease and desist letter. I haven't gotten one yet because I want to mint it. And I'm going to challenge artists too. I want artists to reconsider what it means to share your art with the world. You know, protecting your IP is one thing. I freely give my art to everybody to remix. Take it, remix it. The only thing I ask is don't pretend to be me. I think that's a fair ask. But even if you do, I'm not going to do anything about it. You know, because that's the nature of being, in my opinion, fully copyleft. When you look at sovereign artists like Rodness, who says everything out there, you could steal it, you could take his art, whatever, because he knows and he trusts that the community he's built is going to know what is his true art and what is not. I don't have, for me too, I don't have to protect my IP or my art because I know my community will know when it's genuinely coming from me.
Yeah, and also, you know, I feel like, so I am pretty much very, you know, at a very similar like idea. Like I actually really like the concept of remixes. I think it sometimes brings up some really interesting new forms of, you know, art and creativity. And it's kind of like, you know, when you're almost like in a group and you're brainstorming and you're bouncing ideas off each other, like the fact that like somebody can build on your creativity kind of adds on, right? It's like, you know, more creativity and like more more freedom of expression. And so I'm pretty much in the same thought.
When we look
But
at, sorry, I just want to
no, go
add
ahead.
that when we're looking at like social identity NFTs today, you have like the apes, you know, the Bored Ape Yacht Club,
Yeah.
the Avastars, and all these others hash mats that have given away that give away the full commercial rights to the artwork.
Yeah.
Right. That's fantastic and wonderful, and I think that's a great way to share a product to people. But what I want to point out is that's a direct relationship, a direct result of the work that trash artists did in pushing those boundaries early on, when copyright was being challenged, and IP was, and we were told that no, everybody's, we're supposed to own our own IP. No, what I love about these products is they turned around and said, you know what, we believe in the creativity of the people behind this, so we're going to give you the copyrights to it. That's why when I did my unofficial punks, the owners have full copyright. They could do whatever they want. And I love that. I love to see that evolution and the impact that trash artists had, 2 years down the road. We're talking like 1 year down the road, but still huge impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, like trash art in itself is a movement and a form of, art that was created natively to, crypto art as a movement in itself.
It was, yeah. Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah, that's super cool. So it's like, I guess more of a question, like, it's like at the time when you were, because you challenged these thoughts, right? And these ideas of, what you're doing is wrong, right? What you're doing, you shouldn't be doing. Like you're copying, this is not art. Like how was that process of like pushing through those like preconceptions, I guess? I'm not sure if I'm wording it right, but I think you got it.
Yeah, I think I understand your question. And the way that I would answer that is, I think early on we got into some flame wars, where there's a lot of arguing back and forth. A lot of people, what I found to be the most effective way to communicate this is to educate and share and have open dialogue with people who actively disagree with me. It's okay that you want to protect your IP. The law will provide that for you. Yeah. Also, companies have obviously taken the side, or platforms have obviously moved to a more of an extreme, which is to say that they abide by their terms of service, which typically is more stringent than copyright law, and that's really to protect themselves from from litigation, and I get that too. But it all comes down to education, and it all comes down to being able to communicate effectively without anger showing up. So I try really hard to not bring my emotional attachment to the idea that everything should be copyleft or everything, we should abolish the copyright laws. But I do come from that angle in my communication. But I also come with respect and an understanding of the law. I think the key here too is you can't just come into the space and want to challenge these concepts and then say, well, you're wrong. You need to understand what the law says, right? You need to know that the First Amendment, like so many people say, sometimes usually has nothing to do with copyright. Freedom of speech is a little bit different than, which is being oppressed by a government is different than being censored by a platform, right? Or having a cease and desist letter sent to you and being taken down and having your art being taken down by a platform. There are all these nuances, but they all sometimes get mashed together. So you have to be able to have really nuanced dialogue about these concepts and also understand where your other person is coming from. And that's the hardest part, because Twitter doesn't really give you a lot of opportunity to do background. So I like to ask a lot of questions and sort of debate people that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the conversation around this is like constantly ongoing, right? Like it's not something that it's
never going to end. The reality is there are always going to be people and companies that want to protect their work, and that's okay. But there's also going to be people like me that are going to tell you or try to show you that there are other ways. What I love about remixing is that, and maybe some artists don't see this, but it's an opportunity to share your art and get your art in the hands of other people. Fan art is remixing. I often share this. A lot of people think about 50 Shades of Grey, right? I promise this is going to connect. And 50 Shades of Grey was originally fan art. It was fan fiction written, and the characters were Twilight's Bella and what's his name? The other dude.
Jacob?
Bella and Jacob. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She wrote an entire series, 3-book series about Bella and Jacob having this torrid love affair and this BDSM love affair. And that was fan fiction, but in order for her to sell it, she had to change the characters, right? But that's the evolution of art. That's what we do. We build on. If she didn't have the wherewithal or want to like create a story about these two beautiful characters in a new way, right? That remix, if she didn't feel comfortable remixing that, we would never have 50 Shades of Grey. That's the same thing with all kinds of art that happened before. So that's when I think about remix, I think about all the stuff that happened in between. There are good remixes and there are bad remixes. I've said I thought BitBoy Cryptos was a bad remix, but it was okay with me. And it was bad because it was aesthetically displeasing to me, not because I thought what he was doing was wrong.
And how did the trash art movement kind of like develop? So there were some pioneers, you, Jay DeLay, Rob Ness, Max Osiris. Like I know, other people like kind of came in. I think Yuna, like I had,
So actually, I don't think there was never any intention to create a movement, and I think that's one of the things that often goes undiscussed when we talk about this stuff. The idea was just a group of artists were coming together around the central concept of railing against gatekeeping and railing against this idea that somebody could tell us what art is. And so we ended up finding an open platform at the time, Rarible, which was not very respected. Lots of It was not respected at the time at all. There was a lot of fake art being sold on there. It wasn't one of the big four like it is like I would consider today. And basically over the course of like 4 or 5 months, Trash Art put Rarible on the map. We moved hundreds of artists over there. And then once it became a viable platform, that's when artists like Osinachi started using it more. Hanksy started coming in and using it more. And it's only because of the influence that Trash Art had made at that point, and the impact that we had created and showed what a viable platform Rarible could be for experimentation, for collectability. Did we form the movement? Did it become sort of solidified at that point? Because the whole time we would talk about it being a conversation. We really didn't want to, like Jay DeLay and I would have conversations all the time, and he would warn us in not warn us, but we would discuss the concept of a movement. And he would say, well, it's more like a conversation, right? Because the conversation we're having is sort of broad. There's no single ethos that we came together around, but there's similar ethos among the entire group. There are some artists that are significantly more, copyleft than me, and then there are some people who are middle of the road, but still would consider themselves trash art, right? So it wasn't like this whole single ethos that was driving us. It was more about the conversation around the idea of what art is, what art could be, what it could mean for NFT and the future of big art, the traditional art world.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, that's interesting. Today we're seeing Twitter is using Rarible as a platform to mint NFTs. So it came a long way since those days, right?
Oh my God! And we've had our run-ins with Rarible too. I've had my own run-ins. Having pieces removed. I think that they've done really good work for the space and for the industry, and they've continued to improve their platform. I love what they're doing, and I love what Self-Made Heroes and Known Origin is doing and the ways of communicating with people. It's nice to see some of the older platforms that have been in the space sort of reshape who they are and sort of re-engage with the community. It's nice to see that. I really like what Known Origin is doing. I haven't minted on there. I can. But I'm kind of like, I don't want to overwhelm myself with putting myself on too many platforms. So I'm really picky and choosy about where I go. And for no other reason, not because of prestige or anything like that. It's about like my mental ability to sustain a community. And it requires me to like make sure that when I go onto a new platform, that I'm actively able to promote it as well.
That's super interesting. All of these, I was having like a couple of chats, especially for like kind of newer artists that come, into the space, like you're talking about community and promotion and like words that maybe are not so common, right? Like in let's say the traditional art world, because you have either a gallery or, you have somebody that is representing you or that is doing that kind of work for you, right? So you're not used to maybe the idea of promotion and community as well. I think, community is probably the strongest kind of thing that you can create to really like support, what you're doing and the value that you're bringing. And actually, you've built a community of your own. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I think community gets thrown around a lot. And so the first thing I would tell people is actions speak louder than words. You're going to build a community, build it. Don't talk about building one. It sort of develops, around itself. I don't think of it in terms of building a community for marketing purposes. For me, it's about building a community of people I like to talk to every day, and then the more people I get to invite into my art world, the more joy I get out of it, and so when I look back at where I was in 2019, I had 86 followers, right? I was a nobody in the space, but I just continued to persevere. And the key thing is I've always been myself, either to my own detriment, like getting kicked off Super Rare, which, I think does hurt sales, but also I'm good with that because it was the right choice for me to challenge that. And I recently reached out to them to try and get back on, but they're making some new changes, so that's been put on hold. But that's okay. There are other places for me to promote. But the idea of community for me is less about how can I make more sales and more about how can I add value to the people that collect my work. And that's what I've recently launched something called Spud Gang.
Okay, I saw that.
Yeah, Spud Gang is basically like my little trash art play world now. And you can join, you buy a membership token, and you'll get things like exclusive art that if you're a member, you'll get a private sale to buy for. 50% off on other primary market sales of my art above 0.4 ETH. So there are benefits, right? This is the idea of rewarding collectors who've been with me for a long time as a way to, one, show that I'm in this for the long game. I see Second Realm and me, Eric, as a minimum 20-year plan ahead for developing my artwork. When I look back in 20 years, I want to see the friendships I made through my community. Community as in family, not community as in what I can monetize. And I think that's my biggest strength is in sharing my story. I've been able to build an honest community because I've been honest about my story about my mental health, my story about erectile dysfunction, my story about going through divorce. It's all, I put it out there for the world and for me to heal. And then through that, people connect with me genuinely. And I get to build this great, fantastic community of Spud Gang and Potato Heads and trash art lovers and unofficial alt punk lovers. Like I have all these really fantastic communities that I now get to bring together because I just launched a Discord to like just drive all the conversation there now. Because for so long it was all in these little different spots. The unofficial punks crew and the People's Potato crew and the trash art crew, and now it's all coming together.
And that's amazing. I can totally relate to a lot of things that you're saying. I think the when you said I'd like to build community because I like to speak, like I just want to speak to the people that I think I can totally relate to that.
It's one of the reasons I did the podcast. I did the podcast because I was missing. The space was growing so fast.
Yeah,
I was no longer able to have like 3-hour Twitter conversations with Colin or Rob or Matt. We were all like in different places. Yeah. So for me, the podcast became an opportunity to spend an hour of dedicated time with somebody I like. How cool is that, right? Like that's when I think about like what I do in the space, it's all about how can I like just have more fun with people.
Absolutely. And actually, talking about fun, like I think there's it's really interesting because like obviously like with the development of new platforms, like for example Hic et Nunc and others. I know Robness is like super active on Hic et Nunc, but I've seen so many, even before he was actually on there, you could see people like minting like trash and kind of like which is awesome. I think it's like super cool to see. I was just sending him like a few of the kind of the objects that were minted, and I just said this is so fun because actually like even from new artists that like know about almost like a legacy, right, that they're kind of like bringing on and that's, you know, how really like art movements are created, right? Like it's
Yes.
a bunch of people who then, you know, become like a lot of people who then become part of history. So
That's
it's,
what I love about Hen.
yeah,
Like people were hitting me up too. Like, you got to go to Hen. There's all this great innovation happening there. It's a lot of trash art. People are just, you know, it's like Rarible in the old days. You're getting to like
yeah,
play. A lot of it. What was fun about Rarible in the old days was gas was low. So
mm-mm,
I was minting stuff for, I mean, like 3 cents, 30 cents. So you could mint trash and not worry about what kind of a
of
financial
course,
investment that was going to be. And that's what Hen then provided, was an opportunity for low minting and experimentation. And that's where I call that the weeds. When you know, the dark corners of the art world or the crypto art world, where innovation and like exploration happen when the spotlight isn't on them, and then some people come in and they start to like curate the garden a little bit. You know, that's what we're seeing now with Hen. Is some people obviously seeing it as a viable platform, and some like John, I think, is moved over to ETH. So, you know, for me, I love to see that. It's such a, it brings like really, it's warm. It brings warmth to my heart, because it just goes to show that trash art wasn't like a one-time thing. It's the way that we create it. We're all trash artists. We just don't want to admit
yeah. And what do you think about, you know, everything, like in general, like the movement from now, like crypto art in general, like kind of like zooming out a little bit.
Yeah.
From the time, you know, in 2018, early 2019, up until, you know, 2021, midway through the year. A lot has happened, like auction houses have come in, you know, the NFTs are now a thing. They're on today even more, like they're on literally on the Twitter banner, you know. So that's insane.
It's such
How
a
do
big,
you
it's
go ahead?
no, ask your question. Sorry, I'm like getting so excited.
No, my question is just like, you know, how do you see this this evolution from there until now, and also what do you think is next for the space as well?
Yeah, I think I always thought it was inevitable that we would get to this point. I don't know when. I didn't know when, but it conceptually it just made sense to me when I joined the space. But interestingly, it actually just made more space to me for physical art at first, and I had to wrap my head around the idea of digital asset ownership, because I grew up pre-internet, but I grew up with the idea of like copy paste, right? And so for a hot second, it took me a minute to like wrap my head around it. And once I got that, and then I started talking to my nieces and nephews about gaming and the way that they view tangible ownership of digital assets in Fortnite, when they get excited about like some rare object, or Robux when they're using in-game currency with with Roblox. When I think about those kids, ages 8 to 18, in 10 years they'll be 18 to 28. They'll be the ones making the business decisions. They'll be the ones with an inherent understanding of how the NFT economy and digital currency and in-game currency and all that kind of stuff work. So it's going to be in our lives. It's going to be in our lives because this is the life that they understand already. So business decisions will be influenced by the way that they grew up, the way that business decisions were influenced the way that boomers grew up, or teams like we grew up, things like that. So for me, the evolution is inevitable. And I don't know where it's going to go, but I am so lucky to have fallen down this rabbit hole and not come out of it yet. And I don't ever want to come out of it. I do this full time. I'm a full-time artist, and crypto art allows me to do that. NFTs allow me to do that. You know, I get to build a community. I get to meet people like Gary Vee and have him on my podcast and talk about the very thing we're talking about, the evolution. of NFTs. Here's a guy who came in Web 2.0 and saw social media long before, and the impact it could have long before anybody else. And he's been heads into NFTs, and that's a signal for me, because I've been following him for a long time, that I was when he's coming into a space that I had already been in for 2 years, I know I'm doing something right. And when we're seeing influencers like Jay-Z popping up, punks on their profiles, and Eminem and Snoop Dogg and hip hop coming in, hip hop full of innovators, full of innovation. Get the hustle, get the idea of what it takes to be an artist and make it without mainstream help, right? There's an entire subculture of hip hop that before it became what it is today, they had to struggle and fight their way up. They get it, and they're coming into the space. The hip hop community is coming into the space. Love it. Another signal. The future is so bright for NFTs. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be hacks. There's going to be failed projects, and about 99% of the projects that are launching today probably are going to be worthless in 20 years. But I think the key is, do you have the wherewithal to continue to stay with it?
What do you think is the next kind of, we've seen art as the big starting point for NFTs. What do you think is next? Music, gaming?
Oh, hang on. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I think your camera is blocked.
Yeah, no, it got turned off. It's all right. I'll just continue talking.
Okay. Do you want to turn it, because I can see it's blocked, not off. You want to turn it on and back off and back on?
No, the battery died.
Okay.
That's right. So, where do I see it going?
Or what industry do you think is kind of next?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about utility, right? I think art is already been an experimentation in utility. But I think we're going to see real estate and property ownership be the next evolution. Physical asset ownership has already been explored in the art world with shares of like Warhols and Pollocks and things like that. But and we're seeing property being sold as NFTs for Ethereum already. But this is like one-off situations. I think it's going to become an industry standard in 5 to 10 years. I think that's where we're going to see the merge of the physical and digital world. What I had originally imagined what NFTs would be for, before I wrapped my head around the idea of digital asset ownership.
It's interesting. And what's kind of next in your world? So what are you thinking of next?
Can you see me now?
Yep.
All right. So I switched cameras. What's in my world? What's next? I don't know. Right now, I do know. Actually, I do know. Right now, I am really focused on Spud Gang. I am really focused on adding value to the community on my Discord, as a and not human value, relationship value, and for me that's really important, because in the post-COVID era, when we're all stuck in, I'm a natural introvert anyway, and I can be a little bit socially awkward. I found my people, in NFT land, and I want to now cultivate that in the real world. So when right now we have NFT NYC coming up, right, in November. Looking forward to that and meeting all the people I got to meet online, in person. But ideally, I'd like to do something in between then and now, maybe a meetup of some sort. I haven't figured that out, but it's going to be delivered through my community, and then invite the world, of course, if they want to come. But that's what I'm thinking about. And then Artistically, I'm going to begin exploring my brutalist mannequins again. It's really important to me. They're calling to me. I see you have it one in the background of the episode here. So that one there is called Anger, Hostility Towards the Opposition. And it is literally about me and my ex-wife in the middle of arguing or divorcing or figuring out what the, and we're just so mad at each other that we can't look at each other, and I look back now and I laugh at it because for me, that's how I heal. Is I heal and journal through my physical art, through my art, and then I share it with the world because I need to release it and let it go. And so I want to do more of that. For a while I was stuck on, some little projects like the punks and the podcast, and those were rolling now. So now it's back to the grind and doing some amazing art and like sharing it with the people I love.
And one last question. Do you think that as the space kind of, grows and I guess like, more of, the Twitters of this world kind of come in, will we go more towards a centralized route?
Centralization is inevitable. Even when we think about decentralization, if I want to, this is going to get philosophical, so I don't want to go there. Let's just say that, yes, centralization is inevitable, and that's because people like to come together around ideas. And when people come together around ideas, money comes together around ideas. And when money comes together around ideas, investment comes around ideas, and then there's this whole protectionism around that investment. So centralization is inevitable. It's here already. We're seeing it in the way that platforms manage their terms of service. That's okay. I think one of the things artists who are concerned about that should be looking for is opportunities to develop their own storefronts through, when Jimmy and NFT42 launched Nameless, maybe they could, when that whitelist service, where there's one that I'm working with that I advise on that's sort of in stealth mode now, that we're developing a platform for whitelisting, for having a whitelisted store. If you're concerned about centralization, that would be one way to move your community to a place where they know they can get your work. But then again, this is where the philosophical aspect gets in. That is just centralizing it under your own brand, isn't it? So centralization is inevitable conceptually. Decentralization in terms of like the crypto mindset. I don't know if we'll ever have true decentralization. I think we'll have a merger of decentralized and centralized worlds, and they'll all play together, some in nice ways, some in not so nice ways. And then there are going to be people like me who are around, if you like Rob, if you like Max, to continue the challenge, and Jay DeLay and Colin to challenge those concepts, because I think that's what we're here for, is to push back. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think about it myself quite a lot, and it's and I think I've seen a bit of this as well with like Nung, because essentially they are, the concept of decentralization is really nice, like utopically to think about, but the actual application of it in the, let's say, real world, and like in what is the space as well, is at the moment almost impossible, really. It's not like true decentralization as you would see it is not, I think, something that is easy at all.
No, I don't think it's easy at all, and I think it's because we're human, and because we're human, we like to come together around things, and that forces a centralization in a way.
Yeah, but I do think, sorry, one last note. I do think, like, obviously what you were saying around like challenging kind of certain, you know, gatekeeping like movements, or challenging, ideas and concepts that are not, that you don't agree with, that, you think should be challenged, is actually how you kind of push those boundaries. So,
Right.
hoping that this really like continues as well, and more people keep challenging things that they don't agree with and appreciate with, because that's like movements like trash art, and hopefully many more will pop up.
Yeah, that's how those people who challenge ideas is how we learn where the boundaries are, and it's how we can push law. It's how we can push um, uh, push our concepts, right? If we're not, and that's really what the First Amendment grants us the right to, is to continue to push those, authoritative ideas from the government, which is something that we should be concerned about with cryptocurrency and NFT and all that kind of stuff outside of the art realm. We need to be able to continue to push. That's not my area of expertise. I'm an appropriation artist. I like to push on the boundaries of copyright and IP. Freedom of speech is not necessarily my area of expertise, but people will need to consider what Bitcoin means for freedom of speech.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Eric. This was really great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot for sharing all of this history and talking more about trash art and all of what you've been doing. So that's been amazing.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you for having me. You all can find me just at Second Realm on Twitter. And I look forward to having more conversations. I'm sure I challenge some people's opinions. You can argue with me all day long. I'm not that emotionally.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. Cheers.